She once said, "I loved singing with my family. We didn't have to talk politics that way, we wouldn't talk, we'd sing." But now, the same voice that carried generations of fans has fallen silent, leaving only the songs echoing in her mind, sometimes chosen by her heart, sometimes chosen by her illness. "My brain chooses the worst music," she joked once, "like bad Christmas carols blaring away in my head." Linda Ronstadt, a name that didn't just make people stop to listen, it made them feel. She was the woman whose voice could quiet a room, electrify a stadium, or break a heart with a single note. But behind the gold records, the sold-out tours, and the image of a fearless, boundary-breaking legend, Linda was living a double life. A life she protected for decades, a truth she hid even from those closest to her. And now, as the world looks back on her extraordinary legacy, the secret she carried for 30 years is finally coming to light. A voice strong enough to shake a stage and soft enough to make millions believe in the deepest, most fragile emotions. Yet behind that polished image of the perfect female superstar lived a truth almost no one knew. A truth that stretched across decades, hidden beneath applause, magazine covers, and the illusion of a woman who seemed to have everything. What really happened to the artist once hailed as the voice of an entire generation? And why has her life now forced the world to look back with new eyes? Those answers and the secret she carried begin to unfold right here. Ever think of yourself as the marrying kind? An interviewer once asked, "Why not?" Linda Ronstadt smiled softly before admitting, "I think there's such a thing as adult onset narcissism. I think a lot of us were guilty of that." It was a crack in the armor. A rare moment of honesty from a woman who had climbed to the top of American music as a cultural earthquake. In the mid-1970s, Linda's name wasn't just famous, it was unavoidable. Time, Newsweek, Rolling Stone. Her face dominated every cover, her voice dominated every speaker, clear, powerful, and wrapped in a bittersweet ache. It made millions believe she was born for the spotlight. But behind the glamour, the makeup, the perfectly captured photos, stood a woman overwhelmed by a machine she could barely control. Producers called her the woman who could touch a song and turn it into a hit. And they weren't wrong. The heart like a wheel opened the door to a decade of unstoppable triumphs. Simple Dreams pushed her past Fleetwood Mac on the Billboard charts. Linda's voice wasn't just popular, it became part of American life itself, drifting from FM radios, cafes, truck stops, ranch houses, big cities, and small deserts. But glory never guaranteed peace. At the height of her fame, Linda began to feel trapped inside the very image the world adored. She admitted with startling honesty, "Fame made me lonely. People loved me for my voice, but no one really knew who I was." After shows, she often went back to a hotel room filled with technicians and silence, staring out the window long after midnight. Each morning was the same: a plane, an interview, a photo shoot, a performance, a studio session, a loop she could never break. And as a woman in a male-dominated industry, every step came with judgment. Articles called her a sex symbol more often than they called her an artist. She pushed back with her trademark dignity. "I came here to sing, not to be a symbol for anyone." But even strength has a breaking point. Hundreds of shows a year drained her physically and emotionally. She began relying on sleeping pills just to shut her mind off at night and woke up feeling hollow. Crew members said she lived in two versions of herself, electrifying on stage and utterly exhausted offstage. Love couldn't survive in that kind of life. High-profile relationships came and went, none lasting long enough to take root. Friends said she feared commitment the way others feared failure. She admitted, "I understand love, but marriage, I cannot do it. It would kill my freedom." The sentence became famous, a window into how fiercely she protected her private world to audiences. She was unstoppable, a superstar with perfect pitch and infinite energy. In reality, Linda Ronstadt was beginning to question everything: her success, her purpose, her identity. She barely had time to eat a real dinner. After every show, she was already racing to the next city. Still, music kept her moving until something inside her snapped, and that's when the next chapter began. A chapter of rebellion, transformation, and a decision that would shock her fans and redefine her image forever. She stepped away from the commercial formula that had made her a superstar, and almost instantly the media called it reckless, even dangerous. "I can't repeat myself. I feel like I'm dying," she confessed in Rolling Stone. A declaration that signaled the start of the most turbulent chapter of her career. Her sudden leap into the Broadway musical The Pirates of Penzance blindsided audiences. The transition from rock royalty to operatic theater ignited headlines, leaving critics stunned and fans divided. Variety wrote, "Ronstadt dared to step out of her comfort zone when everything was still in hand." Some admired her courage, others accused her of abandoning her identity altogether. But Linda didn't flinch, she kept pushing. She partnered with conductor Nelson Riddle to record a series of American standards, taking on songs once held sacred by Frank Sinatra. A move that soared on the charts but provoked another round of controversy. Rock purists claimed she'd betrayed her roots, trading electric guitars for nostalgia. Yet Linda dismissed the noise with a single sentence that revealed everything: "I didn't change direction. I just sang what I loved." It became her artistic manifesto. At a time when the music industry rarely celebrated female artists who broke the mold, Linda insisted on doing exactly that. Record labels couldn't control her, they could only keep up. One Asylum Records insider admitted, Linda always knew exactly what she wanted. No one could stop her. Then came her boldest move yet, Canciones de mi Padre, an album entirely in Spanish, honoring her Mexican heritage. Critics predicted failure. The American market wasn't ready for traditional mariachi music, but Linda didn't care. The album became a cultural phenomenon, sold millions and earned a Grammy. She explained simply, "I grew up with this music. I wanted people to see how beautiful it is." Some praised her for opening a new door for Latin music in America. Others accused her of playing with genres just to stay relevant. Linda brushed it off. "If I feel something is real," she said, "I sing it." As debates swirled, she delivered hit collaborations with Aaron Neville and Dolly Parton, proving her voice could travel across genres without losing its soul. Fellow musicians marveled at her instinct, saying she could step into any style and instantly make it sound like her own. But her independence came at a price. Her refusal to fit neatly into the industry's commercial box created a growing sense of distance between Linda and the world she once ruled. She didn't play the fame game. She avoided promo campaigns. "I never felt comfortable pretending," she admitted on television. And then, quietly, something happened. Something far more devastating than bad reviews or industry backlash. One day, in the studio, Linda felt her voice slip, not dramatically, but enough to make her stop, enough to make her wonder. It was the first whisper of a tragedy no one could have predicted. A tragedy that would steal from her the one thing she had built her entire life around. Her voice, her identity, was beginning to fade. During recording sessions, Linda Ronstadt, once the unshakable force of American music, found herself stopping again and again to catch her breath, confused by a weakness she had never known. Her signature crystal-bright voice had dulled, not dramatically, but enough to make her wonder what was slipping away. She blamed age, overwork, exhaustion, anything but the truth. Everyone around her believed the same. No one realized these small cracks were the first signs of a lifelong battle already creeping into her body. In 2009, after a concert in California, Linda confessed to her family that something was wrong. "I don't feel my voice anymore," she whispered. Soon after, she cancelled every concert on her calendar and disappeared from the stage. When reporters asked why, her answer was painfully simple: "I can't sing anymore." The music world froze. The woman whose voice once carried entire generations now faced the unthinkable. Doctors initially suspected Parkinson's. Linda stayed silent, refusing to reveal anything until they were certain. Years later, the diagnosis finally came, and it was far worse. Progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, a rare neurological disease that slowly robs the body of movement, balance, and the brain's ability to control the voice. It had no cure. In an interview with ARP, she delivered the heartbreaking truth, with quiet honesty: "I lost the ability to sing because my brain doesn't control my voice anymore." The announcement stunned the world. Critics once described her as crystal clear, a voice without flaws, yet now even speaking became a struggle. Microphones grew heavy. Words slipped from her tongue unevenly. The woman who once commanded stadiums now had to practice simply to speak clearly. Music journalists called it the most devastating silence in American pop history. In her silence, Linda picked up a new instrument, the pen. Her memoir, Simple Dreams, became her way of speaking again. In it, she traced her extraordinary rise, the painful erosion of her voice, and the courage it took to live without the one thing that defined her. "I'm not angry," she wrote softly, "just sorry. My voice was a big part of my life, and now it's only a memory." Readers felt her truth immediately. The book became a bestseller. Those closest to her said the same thing. Linda never complained. She simply adapted, doing whatever she could each day with grace and humility. Though her health continued to decline, she made occasional appearances at documentaries and charity events, but she never sang again. The silence wasn't her choice, but it became her new reality. And in that silence, the world finally understood the depth of what had been lost. The Sound of My Voice was released with Linda's full cooperation, a final gift from a woman who could no longer sing, but whose story still demanded to be heard. The documentary traced every chapter of her life, from the hopeful young girl harmonizing in California garages to the global superstar who once defined an era, and finally to the fragile woman whose illness pushed her into silence. At the first screening, Linda sat quietly in the front row, dressed simply, smiling as the entire audience rose to their feet. She didn't make a long speech. She didn't have to. She whispered only 6 words: "Music has given me everything." And in that moment, the theater fell into a silence more powerful than applause. Her body was weakening. She needed help walking, her movements slower, her hands trembling, but her spirit still glowed unmistakably. Relatives said she kept up with music news every day, listening to young artists covering her songs with pride. "Music lives on," she once said in a short, fragile phone call, "and that's the only thing that makes me feel at peace." Losing her voice did not push her away from her audience. If anything, it drew the world back to her. Fans rediscovered her classic albums, Heart Like a Wheel and Simple Dreams returned to the top of digital charts. On social media, people shared clips of her old interviews, marveling at the ease and purity in her voice. A voice that once soared across generations. Her quiet San Francisco life became a new chapter where music existed without sound, living instead through memory, legacy, and the echoes she left behind. And from that silence, a different Linda emerged, not the superstar, but the survivor. Still quiet, still brilliant, still immortal. When Linda could no longer step onto a stage, music continued to follow her home. In her small San Francisco house, friends said she still woke early, turned on her old record player, and listened to her younger self sing. I listened to remember what it felt like to have music in my chest, she told an interviewer, her voice soft but steady. In 2013, she released her memoir, Simple Dreams, written in a tone as honest as her songs. She traced her path from the Arizona desert to the world's biggest stages, ending the book not with sorrow, but with acceptance. Music gave me everything, she wrote, including the lesson of letting go. The memoir became a bestseller, celebrated for its clarity and courage. A year later, Linda was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She was too ill to attend, but her dear friends Emmylou Harris and Carrie Underwood stood on stage and performed in her honor. When Linda's video message appeared on the screen, the entire audience rose again. Her voice was slower, fragile, but unmistakably hers as she said, "I was lucky to live in a time when music truly connected people." That same year, she received the National Medal of Arts at the White House, one final honor for a woman whose voice may have faded, but whose impact never will. The photograph of the president placing the National Medal of Arts around Linda Ronstadt's neck spread across the internet instantly, becoming a defining moment in American cultural memory. It wasn't just an award, it was the country officially acknowledging what millions had known for decades. Linda Ronstadt wasn't just a singer, she was a blueprint. Young artists across genres paid tribute, calling her the reason they dared to break rules. Even Taylor Swift wrote publicly, "If it weren't for Linda Ronstadt, many women like me might never have had the courage to sing the way we do." In 2019, the documentary Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice was released, capturing not only her meteoric rise but also her painful descent into silence. Critics praised it with near-universal admiration. The film even won a Grammy for Best Music Film. Linda, though frail, worked closely with the production team, insisting that every scene reflect the truth, not the myth, not the legend, but the woman. In one interview, she said quietly, "When my voice disappeared, I finally understood. Music was never in my throat, it was in my heart." That image of her silver hair, trembling voice, eyes still bright became a symbol of resilience, reminding everyone that the soul of an artist never dies. Her health continued to decline, yet Linda maintained a gentle ritual of connecting with fans through letters and emails. Social media never interested her. Linda never cared about the noise a close friend shared. She cared about music. And the world never stopped caring about her, even in silence. Her name appeared at award shows, tribute concerts, and honor rolls celebrating the greatest voices of all time. Her adopted children, Mary and Carlos, now adults with careers of their own, became her anchors. Mary pursued visual arts and Carlos became a chef. They often accompanied her to important events, standing proudly beside the woman who raised them alone. When asked about motherhood, Linda once said, "I didn't need marriage to have a family. My children are my remaining happiness." It was clear she had found a peace that fame could never offer. Now nearing 80, Linda Ronstadt remains one of the most revered figures in American music. Her frail health keeps her inside her San Francisco home, but her influence is everywhere in the voices of young singers, in the stories musicians carry, in the melodies that refuse to fade. She once said, "I can't sing anymore, but I can still listen. And when I listen, I still feel like I'm part of the music." And so long as her songs continue to echo across the world, her story will never reach its final note. Because behind the brilliance of her legacy lies the beginning of it all. The moment a desert girl left the dust of Arizona behind and stepped onto a path that made the whole world stop, listen, and believe. Before the fame, before the spotlight, before the heartbreak and the triumph, Linda Ronstadt was simply a child of Tucson, a girl raised under the hot Arizona sun, surrounded by the sounds that would shape her destiny. Born in 1946, a third of 4 children, she grew up on a sprawling family ranch where Mexican folk ballads drifted through the windows and Western country melodies hummed from radio speakers. Her father played guitar, her mother sang opera, and the house was alive with rhythm. The mixture of cultures, Mexican-American, rural, urban, created a musical foundation unlike anything the industry had ever heard. Linda later called it the sound of my childhood. None of them knew it yet, but those early harmonies were planting the seeds of a voice that would one day transform American music. But even surrounded by comfort, Linda felt an emptiness that nothing around her could fill. Tucson was warm, familiar, and safe, but it was also small, quiet, and isolating. She later admitted, "I sang because I didn't know what else to do to fill the void in my head." That single sentence revealed everything about her nature. Singing wasn't an ambition. It was survival. It was the only way she knew to silence the noise inside her mind and give shape to the emotions she didn't yet understand. When her teenage years, she and her siblings formed a small folk group, performing at local events and community gatherings. Those simple stages became her first glimpses of who she could become. Even then, people noticed the difference in her voice, bigger than the room, richer than the moment, carrying an emotional power that didn't match her age. Folk music was rising in America, and Linda was already standing at the edge of a cultural wave she didn't know she was about to ride. At just 18, she made the decision that would change everything. She left Tucson and drove to Los Angeles with nothing but a dream and the belief that someone, somewhere, might hear her. She moved into a cramped apartment, survived on whatever she could earn, and sang in tiny bars and coffee houses where the air smelled of cigarettes and ambition. There, she met Bobby Kimmel and Kenny Edwards, two musicians chasing the same dream. Together they formed the Stone Ponies. It was the beginning of a path that would one day shape an entire generation of music lovers. Years later, when people asked Linda if she ever imagined how far she would go, she smiled and said softly, "I didn't know how far I would go. I just knew I had to sing." That truth, simple, raw, and honest, captured the essence of her life. Linda Ronstadt did not chase fame. She chased meaning, and along the way, she gave the world songs that will never fade. If Linda's journey touched your heart, take a moment to leave a like, share this video so more people can understand the strength and soul behind her voice. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you never miss the stories of music legends who shaped the soundtrack of our lives. What part of Linda's life moved you the most? Let me know in the comments. Join the conversation, honor her legacy, and remember the woman who spent her whole life singing after the world could no longer hear her voice.